Hello everyone, today I have a pretty chill commentary and I wanted to talk about the competitive 2.0 beta that is currently going on for Gears of War 4. I'm sure many of you have been dabbling in it. I couldn't for the life of me hit a match where players didn't quit in this playlist and I had something entertaining. So instead what I did is I took some rounds from a bunch of different matches that I played where I did really well during the rounds and put them together, and quite honestly I think this is more interesting and fun to watch than a full escalation gameplay. As you know, they can be quite long and I preferred my commentaries not to run for 25 minutes, and quite frankly I just don't have anything to say for the span of 25 minutes. But nonetheless, I wanted to talk about how I feel about the competitive 2.0 beta, phase 1 at least, and discuss whether or not I think it should be implemented in the final game. I'll just go ahead and give you the short answer. I usually like it when people do that. I definitely want to see these settings implemented in Gears of War 4. Quite honestly, I'd love to see it implemented across all game types, but it looks like we have the core competitive split to stay at this point. So from my understanding, the two major changes that we have with the competitive 2.0 beta are the movement and the shotgun. So I'm going to start with the movement. As you probably know, Gears of War 4 has a wall bounce delay, and I never actually truly noticed it until I started playing this playlist. This playlist removes the delay. I'm not sure if it does entirely or not, but it is very noticeable that you can bounce around a lot more freely. And when Gears 4 came out and it originally had the delay, as I was saying, I really couldn't tell that there was much of a delay. There's kind of an expression that you don't know you're living in poop until someone tells you you are, if that makes sense, or at least that's an expression my dad likes to use. And I say that because I really was unaware of the wall bounce cancel until after I had gone back into the regular playlists after having played this one. So I absolutely love the free flow of the movement, and I'm hearing a lot of people like it too. Apparently it mirrors Gears of War 3 in that sense, where there's no restrictions, and quite frankly, for a lot of things, I'm not a fan of restrictions, so it feels really good to be able to move around the map smoothly, and it's nothing, in my opinion, that's too ridiculous and insane for new players to be bothered by, or veterans. This is something that, other than Gears 1, I'm pretty sure we've had through and through, so it's really nice to see it coming back, and my anecdotal experience is that a lot of people are enjoying the movement, so very happy with it. Now to talk about the Nasher. The Nasher is something that people have been complaining about for a long time. I've heard so many people talk about consistency issues that they've been having with the weapon, and I've always been kind of a proponent of saying that it's players missing a lot. But then again, you know, the Coalition has released a lot of kind of statements or videos or whatnot showing what fixes they've been working on for the Nasher, and explaining why players are getting the results that they're seeing. So that's kind of evidence to me that the Nasher was actually not perfect, and quite frankly it may never be. I think the Nasher is something that players are very passionate about. Obviously it's a staple of Gears of War, but it's also, you know, it's very difficult to get a Nasher that everyone's happy with. I do think at the end of the day, even if we had a perfect Nasher, if such a thing exists, you're going to have players complaining when they miss their shots anyway, because that's what people do. They like to blame other things in the game other than themselves, because it's a lot easier to accept that the game screwed you over other than yourself. God forbid you made a mistake in a video game. So that's a bit of a rant there, but back to the point of the beta setting. So what's happened with the Nasher, as far as I'm concerned, and once again correct me, is that the range has been kind of adjusted so that you can actually do some damage at a distance, instead of, you know, this kind of wall of a drop-off that we used to have with the shotgun, where if you fired and someone was at a distance, you did peanuts, and then you basically have to get in their face if you're going to do any damage. Now it feels like you can shoot players at a bit of a range, and once again, much like Gears 3, you know, suddenly the Nasher has a bit of range that it doesn't feel like you're shooting marshmallows if players are a few feet away from you. So that makes it a bit of a more viable weapon, in my opinion, when it comes to that sort of distance. But I also think that there might have been some sort of damage drop-off up close. I probably should have looked up the details specifically before I did this, but as I said, this is more of a chill kind of commentary of how I am experiencing and feeling the beta. Nonetheless, once again, I think the shotgun feels amazing. I'm feeling like I'm a lot more consistent with it. It's definitely rewarding for players who are more patient and strategic, in my opinion, with the way you are able to kind of land your shots and keep a distance. I was never a fan early on in Gears 4. It kind of felt like you always had to get in super close with the Nasher, to the point where, you know, even if a guy was 4-pointed, the only way you're going to be able to finish him off with a Nasher is if you got like pretty close. And the issue with that is that that gives the player an opportunity to kill you quickly. And what my friend would describe it as is this sort of 50-50 kind of come down, and people don't like that, you know, flipping a coin, so to speak, and whoever hits their shot up close wins the battle. I much more prefer the idea of being able to choose whether you want to cut down distance to go in for those one-shot kills, or to take a lot of shots at a distance because you think you have an advantage and that there's no need for you to go into those one-shot kills. So all that's to say that I'm really enjoying the shotgun in this competitive beta update. I feel like it's a lot easier to up A as well. That's a tactic that I really did not like to use, but I'm finding that I use it a lot now. So those are the major changes, and as you can tell, I am loving both the movement and the shotgun that we're seeing. And I think the fact that, if you are aware, they're actually implementing these changes in private matches for the time being at least. Nothing is permanent, but to me, adding this so people can test it in private matches, obviously it makes sense. I'm very happy they did that, but to me that's kind of a sign that they're intending to keep this change. So now that I've given you my kind of specific thoughts on the change, I just want to talk about the kind of general thoughts I have regarding this idea of a weapon testing. So obviously I'm very happy that the Coalition is putting the time in to make these adjustments and test these different types of settings. You know, it's conducive to working towards a game that is better and better, and especially with the Season 2 announced for the competitive scene, that's something that is huge. I have heard some complaints from people feeling like they're frustrated with the amount of updates that are coming out. So it is a bit of a double-edged sword in the sense that while we do want a developer who is consistently putting in time to update the game mechanics to make it as good as it possibly can, it's frustrating sometimes for players to have to learn new settings and adjust. And once again, this is not permanent, so it's not like a player has to learn this and that's going to be the end-all be-all of it. But it seems likely, in my opinion, that this is a change that is going to be implemented permanently, whether or not it's for Season 2 or beyond, before the life cycle of Gears of War is completely up and Gears 5 is out. So I'm not quite sure the point I'm trying to make with this, but I do think it's something to consider, that, you know, I'd prefer if we have a kind of certain staple when it comes to the weapon damage and movement, any type of game mechanics in Gears 4 at this point, because it is getting later in the game cycle. And with that said, one of the other points I wanted to make was that this is apparently phase 1 of the kind of competitive weapon balancing or game mechanics that they're doing. So I'm assuming there's going to be phase 2, phase 3, and the goal was to do it in phases so that they could get specific information about certain things in the game, and that's kind of clever, but also kind of not, in my opinion. So in this case, they're getting lots of good information about the movement and the Nasher, which is great. But the idea of having a phase 2 where, let's just give a hypothetical, let's say they change the Lancer or change the snub pistol and they collect information for that. It's great that they're able to focus in and collect information to kind of make a decision as to what they should do, but it also makes it take a lot longer for them to finalize the overall decision they're going to make in regards to the kinds of changes that are going to be made, when in my opinion I think it might have just been better to implement all these changes at once, so they could just say, okay, this is how it's going to play out all together. We need to kind of go through the different information and see what's working, just because I'm more of a proponent for speed in this case. Perhaps you disagree. It's completely acceptable in my opinion to think that they should be focusing in on certain bits. But given how long that the competitive beta playlist has been out at this point, I think it's, what, a week, maybe longer. That was a little bit longer than I expected, which is fine because I honestly am enjoying it. But that's just, if you kind of think about the additional phases they're going to do, that to me says that it's going to take a long time before some sort of final decision is made. Regardless, any decisions that would be made for escalation and execution, I'm assuming, because we really don't have any other competitive playlist like that. I'm also glad to see that, you know, this is being tested in escalation as well. I think it's pulling some players over to the game type to kind of experiment with it and see what it's all about. But obviously the other end of that is you're getting a lot of casual players, hence why I was unable to hit a gameplay for you guys that was worth watching, and instead all I could hit were rounds before people ended up leaving. So kind of weird, and you know, these are things to expect. It's just a beta playlist for testing, so it's definitely not going to be perfect, but this is quite honestly the most fun I've had in Gears in a while, and I'm dying to play a team that is, you know, competitive through and through on this type of playlist, and perhaps with the private match update I will be able to do that. But that's pretty much just going to be it. So I'm just going to summarize my thoughts here for you quickly, since I kind of jumped all over the place. Love the wall bounce, or the wall bouncing changes that were made, and I love the Nasher changes that were made. Would prefer if this was all done in one phase instead of a bunch, but I think this is a great playlist, and I'm happy to see what we've got. So I'm very curious to see what other people think. Is this something you've been testing? Is this something that you think we should keep? Should it be implemented right away? How should we go about this? You know, this is a kind of an exciting prospect for Gears, especially for the competitive scene. So as usual, you know, leave me a comment. I always read the comments, and I'm always curious to see what you have to say. A lot of you offer a perspective that I just don't have, which is always great. You know, I'm very aware that what I think is not 100% truth, so always looking forward to reading what you have to say. So nonetheless, I hope you enjoy this video, and feel free to watch the rest of this. It's a pretty crazy round, and that's going to do it for this commentary. Take care.